Hello and welcome to our video on genetic disorders. We're going to be looking at two of them specifically today, polydactyly and cystic fibrosis. Before we do that, it would be worth you having a pen and a piece of paper to hand so that if you are asked to complete any exam questions, you can pause the video and have a go at them yourselves. So, very quickly, we're going to run through some key terms from this topic. Okay. They have been mentioned in some of the other videos, depending on which way you've watched them, which order you've watched them in. An allele is a different forms of the same gene. So although we all have a gene for hair color, alleles could be for blonde hair or for brown hair or for red hair. So they're different forms of the same gene. A dominant allele is always expressed. You only need to get one of them to have that condition or that characteristic. A recessive allele, however, is not always expressed. A recessive allele will only be expressed if you receive two of them, so it can be masked by a dominant one. Genotype is all of the genes in an organism, where phenotype is the actual characteristic that you can see. If I have a genotype of little b for my eye colour, then my phenotype will be blue eyes. And finally, we have homozygous and heterozygous. I have two copies of each allele of each gene from my parents. So I have two copies of each allele. If I have capital B, or little b, then I am homozygous because I have two the same. If I have capital B, then I am heterozygous. So that's two different alleles. So the inherited disorders that we're going to look at, we have chosen, or the exam board have chosen two deliberately. They chose one that's caused by a dominant allele and one that's caused by a recessive allele. All inherited disorders are passed down from your parents to you or from parents to offspring, and they're usually caused by a mutation in the allele. Mutations are random. Nobody chooses for them to happen. They just happen while you're copying DNA and you accidentally copy it wrong. They're non-communicable, so if somebody has an inherited disorder, they can't give it to you or to anybody else. And it can be caused by either a dominant or a recessive allele. The easiest way of losing most of your marks on an exam question is to not read the question properly and talk about a particular disease as if it's dominant when it's actually recessive, because that'll ruin the way that you're doing it. So the first disease that we're going to look at is going to be polydactyly, and effectively this just means extra fingers or extra toes. Okay, polydactyly is caused by a dominant allele. Polydactyly is caused by a dominant allele. So if you get one allele for polydactyly from either mum or dad, you would have polydactyly. You will have an extra finger or an extra toe. I'm going to work through an example of what would actually happen in order to inherit polydactyly. And we're going to look at probabilities again. We're going to say, what is the probability of the offspring inheriting polydactyly if both parents are heterozygous? Remember, the heterozygous means two different alleles. So both parents have different alleles. And just as we've done previously, we're going to use what kind of looks like a noughts and crosses board. All right. Both parents are heterozygous. We're not going to use a P. I'm not going to use a P because big P's and little P's look fairly similar. So for polydactyly, I might use a D. Okay, and we're going to say that both parents are heterozygous. So there's one parent who has two completely different alleles, and our second parent has two completely different alleles. So what I would probably do at this point if I were you is I would pause this video and have a go at doing this question for yourself. I'll then come back and we'll go through some answers. Okay, so what we're looking at here, we should have one box that's got two capital D's in it. Okay, we should have two boxes that have a capital D but also a lowercase d, and then we should have one box in the bottom corner that has just lowercase d's. So what we can see is three of these babies have inherited a capital D. Remember that this disease is dominant, so that means that all three of those, and ideally we would be able to mark on which ones we were talking about, all three of them, and would make sure it's really clear to our examiner have got, these have polydactyly. Okay, these are all positive for polydactyly. They'll have an extra finger or an extra toe. I'm just going to wipe off some of my annotation there because we've got some stuff that's going to pop up. Okay, so we're going to try a second example, only this time the mother is homozygous and she does not have polydactyly. The father is homozygous and he does have polydactyly. So I'm going to let you have a try of this one for yourselves. You want to pause the video to give yourself time to think about it, and then unpause when you're ready to listen to some answers. Okay, so the answer for this one then, we're going to see that the dad, because he does have polydactyly, he's homozygous and he does have polydactyly, has capital P, capital P. He has two capital P's in these boxes here. All right, whereas the mother has two lowercase p's in there. When we cross them over, all four offspring, potential offspring, have a capital P, which means that all four babies, 100% of the babies that these guys have, would have polydactyly. Obviously, this wouldn't be the same if this was a recessive disease. So speaking of recessive diseases, cystic fibrosis is caused by a recessive allele. Okay, it's a disorder of the cell membranes, so it would basically produce thick, sticky mucus from our cell membranes. That would be in the lungs and also in the digestive system. And again, it's caused by a recessive allele this time. So in this case, we don't get this disease unless we received one of them from the mother and one from the father. So inheriting cystic fibrosis, like we've just mentioned, if both parents are heterozygous, that means both parents have a big, a capital F and a lowercase f. So if we start with our Punnett square, if we have a look at drawing our noughts and crosses board like this, okay, and then we're going to say that both parents are heterozygous, so that's two different. So they have a capital F in one box and they have a little f in another box. We're going to get one box in the middle here with capital F, capital F. We're going to get two boxes that both have capital F's but then also have little f's, and we're going to have one box in the bottom corner that has little f, little f. So if we circle this one here, that one there, it might be nicer to use a different color, but we can see it there. That one there has cystic fibrosis, so the probability was 25%. Okay, 25% for cystic fibrosis. So we've got a second example here that we're going to get you to have a work through. This time the offspring, we're looking for the probability if they'll have cystic fibrosis. If the mother is homozygous and she does have cystic fibrosis, and the father is homozygous and he doesn't have cystic fibrosis. Remember, homozygous means two the same. So I'm going to suggest that you pause your video now and have a try of this for yourselves. Okay, so answers for this one, you can see Dad has capital F, capital F. We can see these just in here. So he does not have cystic fibrosis. And Mum has little f, she does have cystic fibrosis. We can see that none of the possible babies get little f, which means none of the possible babies can have cystic fibrosis. It is 0%. Okay, 0%. It is worth mentioning in this one that most of the time people, especially males who have cystic fibrosis, will be infertile. So if this is a male, the main reason it is likely to be that they don't have any babies with cystic fibrosis is likely to be that they can't. Okay, that is the end of this particular video. I really hope it's been useful, and I hope that your revision's going well. Take care and thank you for watching. Goodbye for now.